Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we just finished going over some of the major highlights from around week one in college football. That has been all but in the books now, as we have only one game left to play this week, technically between Florida State and Boston College tonight. But even though we do have one more game to go, I am putting out a top 25 list, and this is before the AP 25 poll comes out. That's going to come out tomorrow, I believe, around noonish. We'll go over their ranking, see how close we were when to my consensus when that comes out. Florida State might go up or down depending on how they do tonight as well. But before we get into that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to GSMCPodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with the message in it. That message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments, throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. Appreciate you guys spending your Labor Day with me talking some sports. But like I was saying, we are going to get into a little bit of the NCAA top 25 list, not the AP poll, my personal top 25. And starting at the top, it has to be Georgia. Georgia was the number one team ranked last week. They didn't do anything to suggest that they shouldn't be ranked at the top. They played one of the toughest teams this week. You know, there were only 3 ranked versus ranked matchups this week. Georgia had one of them. They absolutely decimate Clemson, send them back, send them packing in extremely convincing fashion on what technically was a neutral field, although it wasn't Atlanta, so we'll call it a home game for the Dogs. They take that number one spot pretty convincingly, not very surprisingly. Texas gets number 2. They're up 2 spots from number 4. Texas looked like the most complete team outside of Georgia. Even Georgia started slow. Texas, from start to finish, was just dominating in their game. We even got to see Arch Manning get get some playing action. He threw for a touchdown on a little bit of a sideways shuffle pass. Texas takes that number 2 spot. Down 1 from number 2 is Ohio State. They started off slow. Again, because of that, I had Texas move up above them, but Ohio State, their offense looks good. Their offense looks like they got it fixed. Will Howard, now it wasn't the most convincing performance, but it's better than last year by a very, very large margin. They're able to win in convincing fashion. They move down 1 spot to number 3. Up 1 from 5, we have Alabama sitting at our number 4 rank. Alabama is in an interesting spot. Obviously, they no longer have Coach Nick Saban. We have Kalen DeBoer now as the head coach. He comes in, gets the job done. They almost shut out. They shut out their opponent. We had a 17-year-old kid as well put up 2 touchdowns on 2 catches. This team's going to be good. Jalen Milroe looks solid. Now, we don't want to overreact. Again, our goal is not to overreact too much to week 1, although some of these I might have overreacted a little bit. Week 1, they don't play the strongest opponents. We take a look at the strength of schedule, and a lot of these teams are playing FCS schools. A lot of these teams are playing lowly ranked FBS teams. Even though these are crushing defeats, Alabama beats Western Kentucky 63-0. It's still Western Kentucky. It's not like they played another ranked team. They looked really good, though. We just don't want to overreact. At 5, we have Notre Dame. This is an exception. They played a really good team. They played Texas A&M. Texas A&M that we talked about in the first segment, their defense held them down for a little bit, and I want to give credit to the Texas A&M defense rather than discredit the Notre Dame offense. That should get better. Riley Leonard looked solid even though he was getting bogged down a lot. This is a good Notre Dame team. They're up 2 spots to number 5. Ole Miss stands pat at number 6. Ole Miss beats Furman 76-0. That offense is as advertised. Hard to tell about the defense. That's going to be the big thing for Ole Miss. Again, Furman not the greatest school. We love the Paladins, but they're not the greatest. They're not the greatest football team. Going up against a top 10 ranked opponent was never going to go good for them. They get shut out 76-0. The biggest win of the day, for what it's worth, or the biggest win of the week even. But Ole Miss stays at 6. At number 7, we have Penn State. Penn State didn't play another ranked opponent, but they did play a team that people were kind of putting them on upset watch. I thought they would win, but I didn't think they would do it in such convincing fashion. Penn State goes to West Virginia, takes them down on the road 34-12. And Drew Aller looked really good. That was my big concern with this team. Penn State's defense always looks great. Their defense is always going to be really good, but it was the offense I was concerned about. Drew Aller last year did not do enough to really get anything going offensively. This year, they're pushing the ball downfield. It wasn't always the greatest decision, but it worked. The offense looks a lot more explosive. Drew Aller finishes the game with 11 for 17 passing, 216 yards, and 3 touchdowns. That's with a long delay in between at halftime. I believe it was raining. They had to delay the game for a while. There were a lot of games that ended up getting delayed, but the Penn State defense did its thing. They never really were in any danger. It was a little sloppy to begin, but this is the first game. You're always expecting a little bit of sloppiness, but Penn State is up a spot to number 7. At number 8, we have Oregon. They're down 5 spots. And again, I don't want to overreact too much, but they only win by 10 points. They were favored by almost 30 against an Idaho team that is not like that, right? This is a team that killed it in NIL specifically. And if you look at the stats, it doesn't make a lot of sense how they ended up with only 24 points. They only turned the ball over one time. They controlled the possession 40 minutes to 20 minutes. They had 487 yards of total offense compared to 217 from Idaho. And they were in control this whole game, and yet they only put up 24 points, which is concerning. Dylan Gabriel goes 41 of 49, 380 yards, and 2 touchdowns. But again, it's that 2 touchdown number that has me concerned. This is a game where at the beginning of the fourth quarter, it was a 1-possession game, 14-7. At near the end of the fourth quarter, less than 10 minutes to go in this game, it was a 3-point game. Once Idaho scored that touchdown in the fourth quarter to make it 14-17, this was much closer of a game than it should have been. Obviously, even a 10-point final is much closer than it should have been. But there's not a lot of reasons why it ended up like this, right? Oregon looked good. All the numbers are in their favor. They just could not get the ball. They just couldn't get the ball downfield for some reason. And hopefully that changes later on. But they fall down to number 8 in my rankings because of that. At number 9, we have Mizzou. Mizzou climbs up into the top 10. They were ranked at 11 heading in. They win 51-0 over Murray State. They just looked like a really good team. Dominated throughout. Brady Cook looked solid. There's not much more to say. I like this Missouri team a lot, and they won convincingly. There were some teams ahead of them that did not win convincingly. Michigan, Florida State ended up losing. Those were the 2 teams ahead of them, 9-10. I moved them up above those 2. Missouri slots up into that 9 hole. At number 10, Utah. Once again, similar to Missouri, they win 49-0 over Southern Utah. In-state rivalry. Cam Rising is back, and that is huge for them. Cam Rising throws for 5 touchdown passes, only on 15 throws. 10 completions, 5 touchdowns. That is an insane amount of that's an insane amount of explosive plays right there, right? You're not going to throw a touchdown on half of your throws, half of your completions, right? That's not a normal thing. But Cam Rising is here. Utah's defense is real. It always is. Held them to 150 yards of total offense. Utah might be scary. Utah's a scary team. They're in charge of that Big 12 for now. They slide up to the number 10 spot. At number 4, we have at number 11, we have Tennessee. Tennessee comes in, destroys UT Chattanooga 69-3. their quarterback might have looked like the best quarterback in all of college football this weekend. Now, that's a little bit up for debate. I heard that take a couple times. They were never in danger of losing this game. Of course, they weren't. Tennessee's offense looked good. This Tennessee team might be resurgent. It's a tough SEC, though. They move up to 11. And rounding out the top 12, I have Miami. U of M, we talked about a little bit in the last segment, is just really good at football. Every level of the game, they just dominated against a Florida team that, when you take against a couple of other matchups that these teams in the top 25 have played, it was one of the more formidable opponents, especially heading into the Swamp to play it. They dominated. Cam Ward was not fazed at all. That running game was excellent. There was nothing that Miami could do to stop them, and that Florida could do to stop them. And Miami just looks like one of the best teams in the country right now. They are up 7 spots from 19 to 12, in my opinion. And that's where we're going to take a break. We're going to take a look at the next 12, the bottom half of the top 25 when we come back. But let me know what you have. Let me know what you thought of this list. If you have anything that I was way off on, any guys that you thought I moved way too high up, we're going to take a quick break here. But when we come back, we're going to finish up the top 25 list. So stick around for that. We'll be right back here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.